Welcome back to Resoundingly Human, a podcast series that highlights the work of Inform's members who are transforming the world around us in ways both big and small. I'm your host, Ashley Kay, and today we have Harriet Nembhard, professor and president of Harvey Mudd College, to discuss her plenary session at the upcoming 2024 Inform's annual meeting in Seattle, titled Preparing Interdisciplinary Leaders, Reimagining Your Department as a Place for Educating Future Operations Research Leaders Who Can Tackle Complex and Nuanced Problems. Before we start, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our future videos. All right, let's get started. Harriet, thank you so much for joining me.
Of course, it's a pleasure. I've been looking forward to this opportunity. Thank you so much for having me here.
Absolutely. So in the description of your session, you talk about academic departments as being incubators for future OR leaders. First of all, I absolutely love that description. I'd love to hear, what are all the elements that go into creating an effective OR department or incubator?
First, let me say that I'm not claiming a particular solitary, unique wisdom in this regard. But, as I've come into this role at Harvey Mudd, I've been doing a lot of observing and reflecting about my own trajectory in academia. Short story of how life rhymes, right? Harvey Mudd College is one of the Claremont colleges. I myself did my undergraduate education at our sister institution, Claremont McKenna College. So I was here for the first time some 40 years ago as an undergraduate student, then went on to do a 3-2, did my PhD at Michigan, and have had a career in academia at large R1 institutions. Now, coming back then to a liberal arts STEM college has just really got me thinking about what I've learned, what I see students doing, what I see students capable of, what I see faculty doing in a very distinctive project that is Harvey Mudd, that is, of course, quite different from how I spent the last many years of my career working, as I said, in larger institutions. And we have this place where Harvey Mudd, in some ways, if you allow the shorthand of Veta R1, your job is 80% research, 20% teaching. If you allow that shorthand, of course, there's a lot of service. But if we flip that on its head, it's 80% teaching, if you will, and 20% research at Harvey Mudd. That's not quite accurate because there are intersections and bridges in that scholarship that are just very different. And that has somewhat led me to thinking about, well, if I could distill what I've learned here and what I've reflected on since being here, alongside some of the work that I've been doing with the National Academies Roundtable on affecting change in undergraduate STEM education. If I were to, go back to Michigan IOE, for example, what would I strive to do if I were a faculty member in that place? What would I strive to do if I were a student in that place? And so I've just been thinking about some of what seem to be the secret ingredients and the secret sauce to potentially make that work perhaps either at greater scale or at greater speed, right? And so I say that as preamble, and some of the things that I've been taking some deeper dives on aren't magic or distinctive themselves, but perhaps there's something to reflect on as we think about how do we really enhance the curriculum. I could go into some stories of things that I've seen here at Harvey Mudd in the curriculum, but I've also been really reflecting on a piece of scholarship by two faculty here on social collaboration and collaboration across social boundaries, and the way that they have framed these notions of maybe extending beyond interdisciplinarity and thinking about that social construction or that social interconnection and how we could imagine that evolving and even building that into something of a guide for educators to help develop students to address the very challenging problems that we all know are in front of us.
You mentioned collaboration, and I know collaborations beyond the department, such as those with the surrounding community and industry, are also very important. Share a little bit what this looks like and the important role that it plays.
I think this is our chance to imagine that together, right? I can tell you that I've had some, I think, very formative, important experiences and opportunities to see Harvey Mudd on the world stage, if you will, and I will put it that way, with some of those connections being, right here in California at JPL, but also seeing what it means to see our students in Singapore, the partnerships with the United World Colleges that we have and the like. And those sorts of things have really got me thinking about building partnerships. Yes, there's study abroad, there's study in place, but what are those partnerships that will really help us, not only as my colleagues who worked on the social boundaries work called Hall Shelter and Paul Steinberg, not only as they call it, as they refer to higher education should become broader education. What does that mean on the global stage? What are the opportunities for our students to get experience with questions and challenges in place? And how do we also, for a specific example, how do we really leverage the experience, for example, that our international students have had in their prior education? How do we bring them in as leaders and help us to build a perspective on what service means in a different context? Right. I think that those are the sorts of partnerships and opportunities that are perhaps just there, just at the edges, for us to pull in closer and to really examine and leverage for our departments and for our students.
You mentioned challenges as well as opportunities. What do you think are the biggest challenges currently facing our departments that are looking to achieve more dynamic and impactful environments?
Of course, there's always just, time and resources and being able to organize yourselves or reorganize yourselves in ways that free up those resources. And that's always challenging. A lot of that, of course, starts with the curriculum. And, any faculty member who's worked through a curriculum committee or strived to do significant change in the core or with a new major, will understand that those things, really take a lot of intentional and consistent effort. But I think they can be really worthwhile. I've come here to Mudd and I've seen how colleagues had already gotten quite a running start on developing joint majors. We have majors, we have departments, 6 degree granting departments with majors that are your traditional majors: physics, chem, bio, math, engineering, computer science. But now we're looking at these majors that are climate chemistry, climate computer science, and to develop those as new majors, right? Again, anybody who's done any type of work of that sort knows that that is just a tremendous, tremendous effort. How do we get the resources allocated or reallocated such that faculty, staff, and students can really take the time to think very creatively about how we now can enhance the curriculum, build majors, build partnerships with our colleagues in public policy and social sciences and departments that can be very complementary to the work that we do in operations research.
Now, looking ahead to the conference, which isn't all that far away now, what do you hope that it take away from the session with them back to their own departments and universities?
As I think about that experience, I really want to be able to offer a bit of a toolkit for attendees to maybe start to work through some empowering questions, perhaps while we're together, and then to be able to access resources that will help them frame the questions, that will allow them to, and perhaps inspire them to reach out to colleagues and to students and have perhaps a checklist, if you will, to pull ourselves forward in some of these new opportunities that are there.
So something I've been asking each of our plenaries in these interviews to share: how does the Informs tagline, "Smarter Decisions for a Better World," resonate with you and the work that you do?
In so many ways, I can tell you, we've been working here at Harvey Mudd over my first year on building out our strategic plan around the vision of STEM for the world. And for me, that has a couple of meanings, right? At one level, it's what we are doing through our science, technology, engineering, and math to be of service to the world in these grand challenges, but also that we bring the world to Harvey Mudd in some ways. And we have people who, no matter where you are from in the world, you now have another home at Harvey Mudd. And to me, it resonates in that way. When we're having smarter decisions for a better world, as the Informs tagline, I see very much an alignment in both of those ways. How are we using our gifts, our talents, our technologies for a better world? And how are we, through Informs, bringing people from around the world into that decision-making process? So I think it's just a lovely, lovely alignment.
Harriet, I'd love to switch gears slightly and ask a couple of questions, starting with, what's something new you learned recently that sticks with you? It could be a random trivia fact, a new recipe, something more profound, anything you'd like.
I'll share this. I've done a column for our own Mudd magazine about my trip to Singapore. And one of our students was in Singapore at that time. And he wrote me and said, President Nembhard, I saw your column and I'm in Singapore right now too. When we get back to Harvey Mudd, let's have breakfast and tell each other about our experiences. And I thought, first of all, just how lovely, right, that a student would reach out and offer to, break bread. And we talked about what we had done. He was there during the summer doing summer research. And now, mind you, this is an undergraduate student. Harvey Mudd's an undergraduate only institution. He's a sophomore who spent the summer doing research in a lab at the National University of Singapore. And so I said, in addition to just really amazing work that he was telling me about, I learned about his interests and work that he did in generative AI. But I asked him, now, how did it come to be that you got that chance to do summer research at NUS? What he said really is the learning that I took away about just having some moxie, okay? Because this is what he said. He said, well, I've been interested in generative AI, and I worked in professors' labs here at Harvey Mudd. I wanted to broaden my experience. And so I read 20 research papers on generative AI by faculty members at 20 other universities. I summarized their work. I proposed an extension of their work that I would be interested in, that was my own idea. And I told them that I would be so happy to work with them in their labs. And he said most of them didn't write back. A few faculty wrote back with no thank you, but that one faculty member wrote back and said, yes, please do come and join me. And so that's where he was, working in her lab for the summer. And again, the lesson learned is that have courage to ask and keep asking until you get to the point where you're able to be successful. So I thought that was just, a real meta moment in some way, both the work that he did and how he went about doing it. And it just really held that in my heart for the last couple of weeks.
That's an incredible story. Thank you so much for sharing that. So next, do you have a bucket list? And if so, what's at the top of it?
This idea of a bucket list, this has always been very interesting framework for me. I try not to think in terms of wishes in that way, plan your work and work your plan. But, when I hear that, I think the one thing that still is on my mind that I haven't done is to hear an elephant trumpet in the wild. About 30 years ago, my husband and I were this close to going on a safari, and I learned that I was pregnant with our first child, and there was some particular vaccine that you couldn't get while pregnant, and so I never rescheduled that trip. So that's still on my list, to go on a safari and hear an elephant trumpet in the wild.
I love that. What is something you like to do outside of work that fuels your creativity and excitement?
Dancing always comes top of mind. I don't do it nearly as much anymore as I would love to, or as I've done in the past, but I studied ballet as a kid, did take classes while I was an undergraduate student here at the Claremont colleges. And then, anytime there was any dance class, a cultural class to take as I was traveling, or even just in gyms, if you say a dance class of any type, I'm usually game to try it and just really enjoy it.
Harriet, I want to thank you so much for taking time to talk with me. I'm really looking forward to meeting you in person in Seattle for the 2024 Informs annual meeting in, holy cow, just a few weeks.
In just a few weeks. Yeah. Yeah. Likewise, Ashley, again, thank you so much for reaching out. This has been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Everyone, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on today's interview with Harriet Nembhard and her upcoming plenary session at the 2024 Informs annual meeting in Seattle. All right, see you next time.